7 bone-chilling true horror tales from the countryside that will haunt you forever. It was said that the countryside was alive with whispers. The kind of whispers that curled up your spine and sent chills through the soul. The moon cast a ghostly glow on the silent fields, and shadows danced in the corner of your eye, teasing your sanity. In the small town of Oakridge, peculiar tales were told, each darker than the one before. Folks avoided late-night strolls, claiming they could feel eyes watching from the trees. And when the wind howled, it sounded like the wailing of lost souls, echoing through the night. One night, an old farmer named Gus spotted something unsettling at the edge of his cornfield. At first, it was just a glimpse, an unnatural movement among the rows. But as the full moon rose higher, his worst fears materialized. He described it as a figure cloaked in shadows, with long, elongated limbs that seemed to twist unnaturally. "I ain't crazy," he barked to anyone willing to listen, his voice trembling. "I swear it was watching me." But when the neighbors gathered with their flashlights, they found nothing but rustling cornstalks and the soft croak of frogs, leaving them uneasy and whispering behind his back. As days passed, other strange happenings unfolded. The Johnson family's sheep began disappearing, one by one, leaving behind only tufts of wool as if snatched by a malicious hand. Locals started connecting the dots. Could the tales of the shadow figure be true? A sense of dread wrapped around the community like a thick fog. They shared stories at the diner, their hands trembling over cups of coffee, breaths hitching at the thought of what roamed their lands at night. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. What no one expected was the night the lantern light flickered out at the old Miller farmhouse. This place had been the heart of the community for generations, until the Millers mysteriously vanished one fall evening like leaves caught in a tempest. The house now stood abandoned, silent as a tomb. But that night, cries erupted. Were they screams or laughter? The moon revealed a figure at the window, smiling wide as it faded into shadows. The town held its breath. Could it be the dark figure that Gus spoke of? Whoever or whatever it was appeared to have a taste for terror. What other secrets lay buried in the countryside? What dreams fled when night fell, swallowed by a sinister darkness? And as the sun sank below the horizon, would the townsfolk dare to confront the horrors waiting just outside their doors, or would they choose to lock their windows, pretending their fears are just make-believe? The next evening, a heavy fog rolled in, clinging to the town like a shroud. It made the place feel even more eerie, with the silhouettes of trees standing like sentinels, guarding secrets that begged to be uncovered. Kids skipped dinner in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the figure before bedtime. Adults, however, had their fear firmly wrapped around their hearts. In the diner, the air was thick with uneasiness. Ellen, the waitress, poured coffee, hands shaking as she overheard whispered conversations about the eerie Miller farmhouse. "It's cursed," she heard Mrs. Baker say with wide eyes. "We should just stay away. Better to ignore what we don't understand." But it was too late for that. Curiosity had stirred a darkness in some of the braver souls. "Tomorrow's the night I go," Jake, a strapping young man with a reputation for chasing ghosts, declared loudly, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The murmurs intensified. "You're just asking for trouble. You don't know what lurks there," Mrs. Baker shot back, her voice tinged with genuine concern, but Jake laughed it off. "I want to see what's really going on. Face this thing." The town was polarized. Some admired Jake's bravery while others worried it bordered on insanity. As the night crept in once more, his friends reluctantly agreed to join him. They planned to meet at the abandoned farmhouse armed only with flashlights and bravado, ignoring the tightening pit of dread in their stomachs. By the time they gathered on the porch, shadows mingled with excitement. The moon, now full and bright, illuminated the peeling paint and broken windows of the Miller's house, looming overhead like an oppressive force. With each creak of the old wood, hearts raced. "I'm not scared," Jake called out, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. They stepped inside, flashlights darting across cobweb-laden corners. Dust motes danced in the beams like lost spirits. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, freezing them in place. "Did you hear that?" whispered Sarah, her skin prickling with fear. They exchanged glances, blood running cold. But Jake, emboldened by bravado, strode toward the staircase. "It's just the wind, come on." With leaps of faith and whispered doubts, they ascended into the darkness. Each step felt like it might be the last they took. As they reached the top, an overwhelming sense of despair filled the air. Then they saw it, a dark shape watching from the end of the hallway, a silhouette etched against the moonlight streaming in through the window. It was undeniably humanoid but twisted, almost animalistic in its stance. Jake's bravado melted, and he whispered, "What the hell is that?" Before they could react, a shuddering moan echoed through the hall, reverberating in their bones. The figure unfolded, elongating impossibly, its eyes glinting with an unholy hunger. They stumbled back, terror propelling them. "Run!" Jake shouted, and they bolted down the stairs, the breath of the shadowy figure hot on their heels. As they burst into the night, the fog swirled, thick and suffocating. Behind them, the laughter, no, the screams mixed with the howling wind, chased them into the safety of the darkened trees. Coupled with their rapid heartbeats, the sound was a cacophony of horror that would haunt them forever, but as they reached safer ground, a question loomed like the mist around them: had they escaped, or merely awakened something more sinister? Would the shadows of Oak Ridge unleash their next wave of terror upon the unsuspecting townsfolk? The answer lay in the chilling darkness, and time was running out. The night was a living thing, holding its breath as if waiting for the teens to make their next move. The group huddled together, adrenaline still coursing through them like a wild river. Shadows danced around their feet, and the fog settled like a ghostly blanket, muffling their heavy breaths. "What was that?" Sarah gasped, clutching Jake's arm, her terrified eyes darting back toward the farmhouse. That thing, that dreadful shape they'd seen, it lingered in her mind, claws scratching at the edges of her sanity. I don't know," Jake stammered, the bravado he'd worn like armor now shattered into pieces. "I thought we'd be fine, you know. I thought it was just a story." "We have to warn the others," whispered Tom, his voice barely a squeak. He was always the voice of reason in their group, but this time it was lost in the giants of fear rising from deep within their chests. "They need to stay away from the farmhouse. It's not safe." "But what if it follows us?" Lily, usually the brave one, couldn't hide the tremor in her voice. "What if it's hungry?" Jake's heart raced. He quickly swiveled to look back at the farmhouse, the looming shadow now blending with the trees, devoured by the fog. "We shouldn't stand here any longer. We have to get as far away from that place as possible." With a sense of urgency, they darted into the trees, limbs whipping against their faces as they ran. Ground beneath them was uneven, roots snaking out like skeletal fingers ready to trip their flight. Every sound made their blood run cold: a branch breaking, a soft rustle, a whisper on the wind. Was that it? Did it follow us? Jake couldn't shake the sensation of being hunted. Fear gripped him tighter as they broke free of the trees and stumbled into a clearing. From the darkened woods behind them, a low growl seeped through the silence, a haunting promise that they were not alone. "Please, don't stop." Sarah's voice quavered like a leaf caught in a storm. They sprinted forward, every muscle screaming for relief, yet one thought pounded louder than the rest: escape was only a dream. It was thin, fragile, and slipping away. Suddenly, Jake skidded to a halt as something glimmered in the moonlight. "Wait! Look!" he shouted, pointing toward the edge of the clearing. A dilapidated shed loomed on the fringe of their sight, half swallowed by the creeping fog. The door hung ajar, beckoning like a dark mouth, its insides swallowed by shadows. They gathered, breaths quick, eyes wide. "We could hide in there," Tom suggested, though uncertainty trembled in his throat. Jake's heart raced, battling the instinct to flee against the newfound safety that the shed offered. Before anyone could answer, the growl deepened, vibrating within them like a warning bell. "Now!" Jake yelled, and they bolted toward the shed as powerful instincts pulled them inward, urgency flooding their veins. Inside, the air was stale, an oppressive tomb scented with mold and something acrid. As they crammed into the corners of the confined space, their flashlights jittered, revealing old tools and dusty darkness that begged secrets of their own. But dread pooled where hope once lived. "Do you think it saw us?" Sarah whispered, her breath trembling as she strained to listen. The growl roared to life outside, vibrating through the wood like thunder. It clawed and scraped at the door, the sound chillingly intimate, like fingernails raking over flesh. They all held their breath, hearts pounding in sync. The air was thick with anxiety, every second stretched into eternity. Then, with a crack, the door splintered and something impossibly dark spilled into the shed, silhouetted against the night. Terror painted their faces as they realized their nightmare wasn't over, it was just beginning. What would they find in the shadows? Would they uncover the truth behind the farmhouse's horrors, or become a part of them forever? Staring into darkness, only one thing was clear: they had awakened something that might never let them go. The darkness swallowed the shed, turning it into a crypt. The scent of rotting wood and damp earth filled their noses as the thing outside grunted. Panic twisted in Jake's gut. He could hardly breathe, and sweat dripped down his temples. In the flickering light of their flashlights, the shadows began to shift. The figure stood at the entrance, too tall and too wide. Its eyes gleamed with a malevolent hunger, reflecting their cold fear back at them. Lily gasped, her hand flying to cover her mouth, stifling a whimper. "Stay quiet, don't move," Jake commanded, though his voice quivered. They all stilled, hearts pounding, limbs frozen in a desperate attempt to remain unseen. The creature's claws scratched against the wood, almost playfully, as if it were savoring the moment. Each scrape sang a haunting song, a promise of chaos now edging closer. "Do you think it can smell us?" Sarah whispered, her voice cracking like dry twigs. "I think it can smell everything," Tom replied, his face pale as he stifled a shudder. The thing drew nearer, its breath heavy and foul, enveloping them in a stench that made Jake's stomach churn. He could barely think over the thudding of his heart, each beat a countdown to impending doom. Suddenly, a beam from Jake's flashlight flickered and died. "No! Change the batteries!" someone hissed in the dark. But the panic in their eyes spoke volumes. The last flickering traces of light revealed a grotesque maw stretching wide, jagged teeth glinting like shards of broken glass in the void. With a thunderous crash, the creature lunged through the doorframe. It sent splinters flying, breaking the barrier between nightmares and reality. "Run!" Jake shouted, feeling the others jerk into motion as terror ignited their instincts. They scrambled toward the back of the shed, heartbeats soaring as the creature's growls echoed like thunder in their ears. They couldn't think. They just moved, stumbling over old saws and boxes that crumbled beneath their feet. One by one, they dashed past the creature, narrowly avoiding its snapping teeth. Lily was too slow, and for a terrifying moment, time slowed. Jake watched in horror as the creature lunged, its claws swiping at her. It caught her arm, and the sound of ripping flesh filled the air like a frigid scream. "Lily!" Jake cried out as she fought free, blood staining her shirt, the animalistic rage in the thing's eyes heightening painfully. They burst outside into the fog, the cool night air hitting like ice. But there was no safety to be found. The forest loomed ominously, dark trees curling like claws, ready to snatch them up once again. "Where do we go?" Tom gasped, fear echoing in his voice. "We have to keep moving," yelled Jake, glancing back. The creature burst from the shed, its terrifying shape moving fluidly with a predator-esque grace. They dashed deeper into the forest, breathless and terrified, branches tearing at their clothes. Every sound from behind felt like a countdown to their demise. "What if it finds us?" Sarah wailed, panic bleeding from her eyes. Jake tried to reassure them, but anxiety washed over him. He didn't even know if they were heading in the right direction. "Just keep running," he shouted, pushing them all forward. But the growl resonated again, closer, louder, filling their chests with tremors of despair. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an old dirt road, barely visible through the shroud of fog. Hope flickered for an instant. "Wait! This way!" Jake pointed, lunging toward a forgotten path. They had to find shelter, somewhere to hide. The woods were a labyrinth and the road promised freedom, but the growl was relentless behind them. As they raced down the path, breaths coming in sharp gasps, a distant light flickered through the haze. Was it a mirage, or a chance at salvation? But as they drew closer, the realization hit them like a cold wave. This wasn't a place of refuge, it was the farmhouse. "Not there!" Tom shouted, horror flooding his voice as recognition dawned. They had nowhere else to go, and the creature's low growl vibrated through the ground beneath their feet. The darkness behind them surged forward, a storm of terror ready to swallow them whole. What awaited them at the farmhouse? Was there still time to escape, or would they finally face the darkness they had awakened? As they reached for the handle of the farmhouse door, a chilling scream echoed through the night, leaving them paralyzed at the threshold. The door creaked ominously as Jake gripped the handle, adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire. The moment stretched, each heartbeat echoing like a drum of impending disaster. "What do we do?" Sarah's voice trembled, slicing through the heavy air. "No time," Jake urged, fear clawing at his throat. He turned the creaking handle, flinging the door wide open. The farmhouse was a shadowy maw, ready to swallow them whole, but there was no other option. With a heartbeat of courage, he dashed inside, dragging the others behind him. They stumbled into the dim, musty hallway, the stale scent of dust and neglect attacking their senses. The door slammed shut behind them, a dull thud that sent shivers down his spine. "Where do we go now?" Tom whispered, the panic in his eyes matching the raw fear throbbing in Jake's chest. "Upstairs. We need to find a place to barricade ourselves," Jake replied, urgency spilling from his lips. They raced toward the staircase, the wood creaking underfoot like the groans of the house itself. As they climbed, a sharp, guttural growl resonated from outside. The creature had arrived. It clawed and scraped against the walls, its impatience palpable, each sound a promise of horror that loomed closer. "Quick!" Jake urged as they reached the top. He pushed open the door to a small bedroom, its dust-laden furniture cloaked in darkness. Old portraits watched them with hollow eyes. "It's not safe here," Lily protested, clutching her wounded arm. Blood streamed between her fingers, staining her shirt a vivid red. "It's the best we've got," Jake snapped. He shoved a dresser against the door, straining against the weight. Thud. 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 The creature's claws scraped against the farmhouse exterior, its frustration growing louder. "Do you think it will just leave?" Sarah asked, fear threading through her voice. "No," he admitted, the weight of reality crashing down on him. "We have to find something to fight back. Something to defend ourselves." He scanned the room, and his gaze fell on an old hunting rifle above the mantel, dulled with age. "Help me get that," Jake called out. But just as they moved to grab it, the door trembled violently, a primal roar filling the hallway, drowning out their frantic breaths. The dresser shifted, a small crack appearing at the base. "Oh God! What do we do?" Tom stammered, eyes wide with terror. Think. Think. Jake shouted, trying to quell the panic rising in his throat. The rifle was their only hope. I'll get the gun, you all hold the door. Lily and Sarah pressed against the door, both using their weight to keep it closed. Tom scrambled for anything he could use as a weapon. The growling was thunderous now, echoing through the house like a malevolent symphony. Jake leaped for the mantel, his fingers stretching toward the rifle just as another bone-rattling thud struck the door. He grabbed it, heart racing, feeling the cold steel in his hands. "I've got it!" he yelled. But as he turned back, dread washed over him. The dresser groaned, sliding slightly to the side. "No! No!" Lily's voice cracked, the reality of their situation sinking in. With a final push, the creature thrashed against the door, and Jake knew they had moments left. "Get ready!" he shouted, aiming the rifle at the door's edge. But the door burst open before he could pull the trigger. The creature lunged forward, eyes glinting with wicked anticipation. In that instant, adrenaline surged through Jake as his finger tightened on the trigger. The shot rang out like a death knell, reverberating through the farmhouse as chaos erupted. Time hung, suspended and electric, as shadows danced around them. But amidst the confusion, a shadow from the back of the room unfurled, revealing something else. Something unexpected. What lurked in the other corner? What hidden terror awaited them now, ready to join the chaos that had breached their sanctuary? The scream shattered the moment, slicing through the chaos like glass. The creature, a twisted amalgamation of claws and wrongness, had barely stumbled through the door when its attention shifted. Jake's heart raced as he flicked his gaze to the shadowy corner of the room, where another presence now writhed beneath the flickering light. "Is that?" Sarah whispered, eyes widening in horror. Jake felt a sick twist in his stomach. There, huddled behind an ancient wardrobe, was a woman. Her hair tangled and wild, her clothes torn and tainted with dirt and dark stains. But what froze him was the wild look in her eyes. It was a blend of desperation and madness, like she had seen transcendental horrors beyond comprehension. "Get away from her!" Jake shouted, readying the rifle, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had no idea who or what she was, but he couldn't take any chances. The creature snarled, its focus split between Jake and this new prey. It hesitated, its hulking frame vibrating with rage. "Please help me," the woman croaked, dragging herself forward, her joints cracking with each movement. Blood trickled from the corners of her mouth, and Jake could see the glint of sharp teeth tucked behind cracked lips. She was worse than they had imagined, no longer simply afraid, but twisted by whatever this nightmare house had turned her into. "Shut up!" Lily screamed. "Don't let it hear us." The creature's nostrils flared, catching the scent of fear. It was a primal predator, instinctively feeding off the terror radiating from them. "Lily, hold the door!" Jake barked, not letting his focus waver. He shifted his aim between the two, torn between wanting to protect the girl and desperate to shoot the creature that threatened to obliterate them all. But then, without warning, the woman lunged for the creature, an unnatural speed surprising everyone. She clutched at its leg, shrieking with a voice that gutted like a knife, "You don't own me!" The creature roared, recoiling in shock, momentarily allowing Jake to regain the upper hand. Heart hammering, he squeezed the trigger, feeling that blissful rush of power as the bullet ripped through the air. But the shot went wide, hitting the wall with a thudding crack instead. "Damn it!" he cursed. Heat flooded his face, a mix of fear and anger. The creature twisted back toward him, fury burning in its eyes. It lashed out, swiping wildly, and the woman darted aside just in time. Jake stumbled back, struggling to keep his footing as he reloaded. "She's not going to stop it!" Tom yelled, urgency coiling in his voice. "We need to fight together, Jake. Aim for its heart." As Jake fumbled with the ammunition, a terrified scream erupted from the depths of the hallway. It was another voice, man, woman, or child. It didn't matter, something else was here, and it wasn't the creature. "There's more!" Sarah shouted, wide-eyed and shaking. "We're not alone." A chill crept in, tightening around their throats. The farmhouse seemed alive, breathing, a predator hunting its next meal. Each creak and moan of the old wood whispered secrets, warning them of a deeper level of horror they hadn't tapped into yet. "Grab the gun!" Jake yelled to Sarah, who hastily stumbled forward. Yet the rumble of heavy footfalls echoed from below, each sound sending spikes of dread through their hearts. A scream tore from the shadows, a plea for help or a lure into deeper darkness. They were losing their time, their safety, their sanity. The horror was only beginning, and the room began to spin into a vortex of unrelenting fear. In that suffocating moment, Jake realized, this was no ordinary farmhouse, it was a trap. And for all they knew, the worst was still to come. What could possibly rise from the shadows next? What unspeakable force awaited them, and how many lives had it already taken? Jake's blood pounded in his ears as he braced himself against the wall, the rifle now feeling heavier than ever. He could see the creature's eyes, a swirling mix of primal rage and something colder, more calculating. That look sent shivers racing down his spine. "Tom! Where's the other gun?" he barked, his voice strained. He needed a backup. They all did. Tom rifled through the pile of disheveled belongings scattered across the dusty dining table. "I can't find it. I think it's in the other room." Panic seeped through Tom's voice, spurring Jake's heart to race faster. They had to do something. They couldn't stay trapped here. The woman on the floor, if she could even be called that, clawed desperately at the creature's leg, her voice turning from rage to anguish. "You don't understand. It's coming for all of you. It wants your fear." Her eyes glossed over, revealing a glimpse of the madness lurking inside. Jake faltered, fear mingling with his resolve. What do you mean? What is it?" Suddenly, the creature lunged, its claws slashing the air. The woman barely dodged, her swift movements reminding Jake of a cornered animal. Lily screamed again, and in her panic, she let go of the door, which cracked open wider, revealing the dark hallway beyond, a yawning mouth ready to swallow them whole. "Close it! Close it!" Jake shouted, but it was too late. The movement had drawn attention, and down the hallway, shadows gathered, pooling like spilled ink. More forms shifted, becoming visible only when the light flickered again. The terror of recognition knotted in Jake's stomach. They were not just shadows, they were victims like the woman-haunted souls tied to this cursed place. "What have you done?" the woman hissed, suddenly rising to her feet with a speed that left Jake breathless. "You've awakened them all." The shadows coalesced into faces, their mouths opening in silent screams. Eyes filled with anguish stared back at them, reflecting their own fear. It was not the creature they should fear, it was the host of spirits, the darkness rising from the abyss. Jake's body tensed as he fought to maintain his grip. Every instinct screamed at him to run. "Stick close," Jake commanded. "We need a plan." His voice shook, but he willed it steadier, focusing hard on the present. Just then, a deafening crash echoed, shaking the house as though the walls themselves were caving in. The floor trembled beneath them, tossing furniture this way and that, adding chaos to the already suffocating atmosphere. "Get downstairs now," Tom yelled, his courage mingled with sheer terror. There was no time left. The basement door would be their best shot at survival if they could reach it. As they sprinted toward the hallway, the creature charged after them. Claws swiped inches from Jake's back, sending him lurching to the side. He felt the air whoosh past his face, a warning. "In here!" Sarah hollered, darting into an adjoining room. They crowded into the cramped space, hardly able to breathe, hearts pounding in unison. The shadows pressed close, pushing even against the wooden door behind them. "Is this it?" Jake gasped, his eyes darting between terrified faces. "Is this how we end?" The woman confronted him, the crazed energy in her eyes transforming into something almost hypnotic. You have to embrace it or it will consume you. Fear is the key. His gut twisted. Embrace it? What type of madness was she suggesting? But before he could react, the door began to bend, nails screeching against the wood as the creature fought to get through, a roar of rage punctuating the air. A desperate idea flickered in his mind, something he'd never considered before. What if fear wasn't just a curse? What if it was also a weapon? As the door bucked, he gathered everyone close. We fight together. The moment we share our fear, we can do something. We'll transform it. But as he spoke, echoing thunder rumbled through the house, and he couldn't shake the unease rising in his chest. What other horrors would they unleash by embracing their fears? Would they emerge stronger or fall victim to something far worse? The shadows quivered against the door, a malevolent dance fueled by the creature's rage. Jake felt the cold sweat trickle down his back. The wood creaked and bowed under the weight of something monstrous. It was a primal reminder that time was not on their side. Fear! Jake shouted, attempting to drown out the chaos. Let us share it. Let it tie us together. He glanced around for support, but the fear in his friend's eyes was palpable. They were teetering on the brink, their minds grappling with the idea of surrendering to something so dark. We're stronger together. He pressed, desperation driving his words. Tom steadied his breath, barely holding on to his composure. I don't know if I can just feel it. Jake urged. What scares you the most? Let it out, all of you. The room held its breath, the shadows pressing closer, their whispers barely audible. They fear the dark death being forgotten. Sarah trembled, her voice quaking. But if we release our fears, will we be obliterated by them? Maybe the woman's eyes sparkled with a hint of twisted assurance. Or we'll force them to listen. With a shaky resolve, Tom stepped forward. Fine. I'm afraid of losing you all, of never seeing another sunrise or laughing with my friends. His words hung in the air like lead. Sarah clenched her fists. I fear the unknown, that I'll be swallowed whole and never escape. Jake felt the collective weight shift as the tension clung to their words, and he too found his voice. I'm afraid I won't be enough. That I won't protect you. As they shared their fears, the room trembled. An eerie glow bathed their faces, a faint shimmer pulsating from within their hearts. The shadows paused, their relentless advance halted by the unexpected surge of raw emotion. The woman stepped forward. Keep going. She urged, excitement threading through her tone. I'm terrified of the past. Jake's voice broke through the noise. A past that won't let me go, and what it's done to me. The revelation struck like a bolt of lightning, and a surge of power coursed through the room, igniting an electrifying energy. The shadows recoiled slightly at the onslaught of shared trepidation, transforming, twisting in angry swirls. Lurching voices wailed from the hallway as the forms rallied against the door, 1,000 cries ascending to meet their fears head-on. But what if it consumes us instead? Tom asked, casting a wary glance toward the frantic shadows. Then we'll face it together. Jake shouted, courage burning brighter within him. Whatever comes, we first embrace it like a heavy coat. And suddenly, the door splintered, wood flying in every direction as the creature burst through, a nightmarish visage framed by the dim light of the room. Claws raked at the air, tearing through the collective fabric of their resolve. But with fear fully bared, they felt an unexpected alliance with the room itself, the walls vibrating with their shared emotion. No! The woman screamed as she charged toward the creature. You cannot have us. We are no longer afraid. As they joined her, Jake's heart raced. The shadows twitched, warping indecisively. For a heartbeat, everything paused. The cacophony of dread suddenly turned, morphing into a fierce unity, but would their emerging power be enough? As the creature snarled, revealing a maw of jagged teeth, Jake wondered if they could truly overcome it, or if their deepest fears would be their undoing. The ground shook again, and the shadows behind them swelled with fury, beckoning forth every fear that had ever crossed their minds. In that moment, the room was not just a battleground, it felt like a storm ready to break. But would they stand their ground, or get swept away in the tempest that awaited? What lay beyond the door could either be salvation or doom. One question loomed large in Jake's heart: would confronting their fears free them, or deepen their descent into the darkness? The air thickened, heavy with an electric anticipation that set Jake's heart racing. The creature's eyes, glowing embers in the dark, locked onto him like a predator that had finally found its prey. The horrifying form loomed larger than life, its jagged teeth bared in a feral grin. A sudden chill clawed at Jake's spine, an icy tendril wrapping itself around his throat, squeezing tighter with each breath. "Stay together!" Jake shouted, trying to sound brave, though doubt festered in his gut. Suddenly, the woman lunged, charging straight into the maw of the beast. "Fight it!" she screamed, her voice a rallying cry that echoed through the chaos. In that instant, the shadows pressed against her, swirling and whipping like a cyclone desperate to consume her. Tom, wide-eyed and trembling, was rooted to the spot. "What are you doing?" he yelled, panic surging through his veins. "You'll get yourself killed." But she didn't care. Her fists glowed with that same eerie light, filled with a determination Jake had never seen before. She hurled her fear at the creature, and the shadows recoiled, screeching in protest. "We're not afraid. We'll carve our path through this darkness. Just breathe," Jake urged, trying to shake Tom from his stupor. "Channel your fear. Let it flow through you." Gathering his courage, Tom stepped forward. "I'm scared of losing myself," he shouted. "Of being nothing more than a shadow of what I could be." He thrust his hands toward the creature, and an unnatural wind whipped past him, igniting the room with a feverish energy. Jake joined them, his fear pulsing in his chest like a drum. "I want to let this darkness swallow me whole." One by one, they stepped forward, bearing their souls like swords. Sarah, her face pale but determined, shouted, "I want to be a prisoner of my mind anymore. Let this evil see me for who I am." The creature quaked, its form blurring and shifting as their collective bravery surged toward it. Shadows flickered like flames, battling against the monstrous creature that fed off their terror. Yet, as their fear transformed into strength, Jake felt the ground rumble beneath him. Something darker than any fear lurked just behind them. A low growl rippled through the air, sending a shiver down Jake's spine. The shadows behind them burst forth into something monstrous, a mass of swirling darkness that ebbed and flowed like an angry tide. It was more than the creature they had awoken, the nightmares dwelling deep inside them. Each fear, each regret, took form and joined the chaos. "Jake! We need to get out!" Tom screamed, his voice cracking as horror washed over him. "No!" Jake retorted, his voice fierce with defiance. "We can't let it win. We have to fight, or we'll never escape." But the shadows howled, drowning out his words, swirling into a tangible darkness that magnified their worst fears. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, suffocating. The walls narrowed, closing in like a noose. Jake's heart thundered in his chest. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were battling an onslaught of memories that clawed at their sanity. Together. The woman's voice pierced through the chaos. "We can do this together." With that, she lit up with blinding energy, pushing through the encroaching darkness, dragging her friends with her. But just as they started to push back against the tide, a chilling realization hit Jake. It was only their fears they had to face. They had unleashed something inside them all. Something that would either save them or doom them. As the shadows roared, a pain erupted in Jake's chest, and he choked back a scream. "What have we done?" he gasped, barely audible above the cacophony. Could they really fight back, or had they stumbled into a nightmare from which there was no awakening? Jake's eyes widened as the shadows began to take shape, enveloping them, and a terrible thought struck him. In facing their fears, had they somehow unleashed a greater horror? What loomed before them might be the end or the beginning of their fight for survival. What would they discover in the fray when every fearful shade of their past confronted them head-on? The shadows swirled menacingly, morphing into grotesque figures of fear that clawed at Jake's heart. It felt like 1,000 voices cried out in despair, each one resonating with his own doubts and nightmares. He gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of fear pressing against his chest. "Fight it!" he shouted, forcing every ounce of courage he could muster into his words. "We're not going to let you take us." The creature, a grotesque avatar of their combined fears, snarled, its form flickering between monstrous and human-like in a macabre dance. He could see the twisted faces of his friends reflected in its eyes, staring back at him with expressions that spoke of dread and disbelief. Suddenly, the woman, emboldened by his declaration, stepped forward again, her hands aglow with energy. "It feeds on our hopelessness. We have to turn this around." Her voice rang out, sharp and commanding, igniting the spark of defiance within them all. Each friend began to echo that sentiment, to vocalize their fears as a weapon instead of a ball and chain. "I'm terrified of failing," Tom blurted without hesitation. "Of never finding myself, or being what everyone wants me to be." "I'm scared of being forgotten," Sarah added, her voice ringed with angst, "of drifting through life without purpose." Strength surged in the air between them, a palpable charge that hung, waiting for the final push. They were united, not just against the creature that prowled before them, but against the very shadows haunting their lives. Jake felt the heat almost like fire spilling from their words, igniting the room around them. "I've been afraid that I wouldn't be enough, that I'd lose everyone I care about while I stand frozen in fear." As he spoke, he felt his voice vibrate with the intensity of shared vulnerability. The creature snarled, recoiling as if each confession struck like physical blows. The walls shook, and the shadows writhed, drawn back momentarily, but Jake knew they needed to keep pushing, to fuel that energy. "We can break this together," shouted Lily with renewed clarity. "Fear cannot bind us unless we let it." The creature howled, a primal scream that reverberated through the house. Its fury struck a chord deep within Jake. It lurched forward, raking claws through the air. But the light grew around them, entwining their fears into a vibrant tapestry of strength, every shade lifting them higher. They were not just battling darkness anymore, they were reclaiming their lives. With every collective cry, the creature began to stagger, its grotesque form wavering like a mirage. The very shadows that once haunted them seemed to dissolve into the air. "Together!" Jake called as he thrust his pulse of hope outward, illuminating the darkness with their shared roar. In one final, desperate effort, the group surged forward, harmonizing their fears, combining them into an unstoppable force. "We are not what you made us. We are stronger, and we're taking our power back." The room exploded with light, blinding and pure, intertwining their voices into a unity that shattered the oppressive darkness. The creature recoiled, its anguished screams drowned in the echo of their fearless chorus. Then, silence enveloped them. Jake slowly opened his eyes, the brightness fading to reveal a room now bathed in soft moonlight. The weight of the shadows lifted, leaving the horrors behind them in a hushed echo. The walls were intact, and the air felt lighter, more like a sanctuary than a tomb. They stood together, breathing heavily, hearts racing but alive. The strange woman had vanished, leaving behind only the memory of her fierce spirit. "Did we?" Tom whispered, eyes wide, searching each face. "Yeah," Jake breathed, glancing around. "We did. We faced them." As they emerged from the farmhouse, the chill of the night was gone. A new dawn glimmered on the horizon, and with it, an undeniable sense of freedom. Treading on the path away, they bonded through shared relief and silent understanding. They had battled the darkness not only of the house but within themselves. Standing on the threshold, Sarah turned to face her friends. "We can't let fear make our choices for us anymore." "No more shadows," Lily added with a soft smile, and together, they stepped into the warm embrace of dawn, leaving the darkness of the farmhouse and its horrors behind. They were forever changed but united in their newfound clarity. the sun bathed them in light, and with hearts beating in sync, they each promised to hold on to this feeling, this power to never again let fear rule their lives. This was their farewell to darkness, their commitment to facing whatever lay ahead. But for the townsfolk of Oakridge, there were still whispers lingering in the wind. A reminder that shadows always await, just beyond the veil of the light. You need to subscribe now so that you don't miss the next exclusive stories that could send chills down your spine. Smash the like button now to help feed the algorithm and ensure you stay connected. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this haunting conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this chilling journey with you. Your voice matters. Let us keep the community alive.